What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of Live here on Keystroke Medium. I am Josh Hayes here with Chuck Manley and Scott Moon,
who has a serious deadline this week.
He's got a serious, super serious deadline.
It's like some deadlines are not serious. It's like, it's not a serious deadline.
That's not really a deadline. It's an alive line.
That's why the word dead is in there, because it's not serious.
All caps, dead line. Or make it 2 words.
Line of the dead.
Welcome everybody in the live chat. Rick Partlow, much to the disappointment of Brendan Shoes, got the first comment of the day. No, he's like, oh, very disappointing. Let's combine the two. Brendan and Rick get the golf clap of appreciation today. Welcome everybody in the live chat. Thank you for hanging out with us today.
They're co-champions today.
Co-champions, yes. They both get the participation trophy. So does Patricia. I like how she said every time her Corey sees Rick in the chat, he goes, Partlow! That's awesome. What's up, Lou? How are you? If you're joining us on the live feed, welcome. And if you haven't hit that like button, hit the like button right down below the video if you're on YouTube, and then hit the subscribe button and notification bell, and you'll get notified every time we go live. If you're listening on the audio feed and you didn't know, we have a live show on Monday, which I say this every week. So if you listen to the audio program more than once, and you're probably really tired of me saying it.
No, they can never get enough. It's the best.
Well, okay.
It's the best. I love
it. It is.
I
heard in my sleep.
In my nightmares.
This episode of Live is brought to you by SciFiReads.com. You can sign up for their newsletter and get notified about different deals going on in the indie sci-fi world. Books by Chris Fox, Christian Calais, Scott Bartlett, G.P. Hudson, and Brandon Ellis, and more. Go to scifireads.com/exclusive content to sign up for why are you? I don't want to be signed into Grammarly. Stop it. Okay, there we go. Good.
Grammarly's pretty pushy about that, man.
You are not signed in. Don't worry about what I'm doing. Does Grammarly not know we're in the middle of a live show?
Grammarly doesn't care. Grammarly's like a honey badger. Grammarly don't give a shit.
Honey badger don't give a
shit.
If you don't know what we're talking about, go to YouTube Honey Badger. It's hilarious.
It's pretty funny.
Today we're going to be talking about strategeries and organizationalese in your writing. Scott's trying to be more strategic about his writing, and Chuck is trying to better organize his processes.
Because I'm a mess, y'all.
You should see my desk.
Don't look at his desk. He'll have instant heart attack.
PTSD from looking at my desk.
Organization of processes. We talked a lot about Plottr last week and kind of messing around with the program for the first time. I have since done the first 3 chapters in my Savage Star series, which is a new series I'm working on, hopefully to publish late this year, maybe fall, depending on how fast I get it written. But I did the first 5 chapters in Plottr and then did the export to Word just to see how it came out. And it was really cool. It broke it down. Every heading in Plottr and the scene notes, it became a level 1. Now I can't remember what the word headline. Heading. Level 1 heading. Yes. Yep. And then, the chapter became a level 1 heading, and then the beat card became a level 2 heading, and it automatically did this, and it presented the notes that I had created for each one of those cards as a separate thing, and so you could easily go through your Word document and just start writing. And I thought that was really interesting. Scott, you did the Scrivener.
I did both, and I really liked them, but I just briefly did the Scrivener, watched a little bit of a video. But when you export it to Scrivener, it actually makes cards, and it makes in your references sections, it makes all those notes go into their own section. Like the way if you're familiar with Scrivener, you have your document that's active, then you have references, and in the references you can put anything. You put book covers, notes, prior versions of your story, whatever. But it broke all of that out like in a multi-tier Scrivener thing. So it was very, very interesting. My only problem, because Plottr will kind of go into our show today. We're actually starting on topic. I can't believe it. It's amazing.
That's crazy.
But it could be a very good productivity and organizational tool.
Yeah.
The problem I'm struggling with, I talked to Josh about this yesterday, was I like to outline and then write, pants a little bit, and then outline and then pants a little bit. Well, it's a little bit harder to do with that because you can't export it back into Plottr. You'd have to update things manually. So, but it might be a good stretch goal or learning tool for me to plot all the way to the end of the book and then write, because I tend to get impatient and just start writing.
Well, and I think that's one of the interesting things about being organized about your writing, being strategic about your writing,
intentional,
is seeing where your weaknesses are and then working to improve those. I think not a lot of times, but I think sometimes the farther you get into your experience as a writer and your writing career, if you want to call it that, you get kind of stuck in ruts and don't want to try different things to kind of improve your toolkit. And I think doing things like either trying Plottr or trying Scrivener, even if you don't stay with that, is a good way to kind of work that writing muscle just so you can try to do new
stretch goals.
Yeah.
Little stretch goals. Better every day. That's what I wanted. My writing goals. Better. I want to constantly, but I don't want to get stuck. You can always get better. So.
Oh, definitely. 100%.
I'm willing to try stuff, even if it makes me yell and scream and rant about the technology issues.
Why can't I log out of it? I want to log out and then log back in. That's not how it's built. I don't care. That's the way I want to do it.
I think you should be able to log out of the program.
That's a callback to our pre-show last week.
Yes, it was.
Oh, so
I loved how he was talking to Josh, like Josh was the guy that designed the app.
This is your fault. This is your fault.
It was his fault.
This is totally your fault, Josh.
We should charge for the pre-show.
Oh my God.
Lou Holston says, just read that Microsoft is trying to acquire Nuance. Maybe we'll see Dragon naturally speaking integrated into Office projects in the future.
That would be cool.
What's really cool about that is if they do end up going that way, it'd be really interesting if they integrated the transcription process of Dragon Professional into Word. And so you can take your audio files, transcribe them through Word, and then it's just already, look at this. That's amazing. We're going to leave that right there for the whole show.
Software.
I completely agree with Patricia on that. That would be really interesting to see. Hopefully because their Dragon Anywhere software is okay, but sometimes I think it's kind of clunky, and so it would be cool to see how they integrate that into not only Word for the PC, but their Word app on iOS.
So Dragon naturally speaking for the PC is a learning software. You can teach it to recognize your voice. Or Dragon Anywhere, you get what you get, which there's pros and cons to that. It's really convenient because it's mobile, but you can't like teach it words in your strange Chuck urban fantasy book or something,
The Lords of Galista first
How's you?
and then it just tells you what you think it is. It's funny that you mentioned that because I did a lot of transcription for the first few chapters of Gods of Fire, and the alternate world in that book is called Hamar, and
hey Marv,
it has done like multiple different, like sometimes it'll say hey Marv, or sometimes it'll say like hey more. It just gives all these words, and so I'm reading through the transcription and it gets that word. I'm like, what was I saying there? And I have to go back and fix it out.
Well,
that's funny.
I have the same problem. I have a character named Zedas, Zedas, in the Orphan Wars, and it always says Z is or something like that. Well, it's easy to miss on proofreading. So what I do in Dragon Anywhere to avoid the getting back to our show topic of being organized and tactical, whatever. No,
we're not being organized.
Yeah, exactly. But what I do to avoid that lack of ability to teach dictation is I just put everything in brackets. So for Zedas, I put open bracket Z, close bracket, because that just puts a Z. And it's easy to search and replace and things like that. So there are workarounds to the funky fictional names and places and stuff.
Patricia Gillen says she's loving JustPressRecord app.
That is a good one.
Plotting and notes. I really like that app.
It's super good. $5. You can't hardly go wrong with JustPressRecord.
Yeah. And there's only been one time that it hasn't worked correctly, and that was the time that I decided to buy my Olympus recorder. But it did really well. Other than that,
it's $4.99, I think, and it's not a subscription, so you pay $5 one time and then you just use it. So that's kind of refreshing.
Right, because everything is a subscription now.
Yep.
So Chuck, you kind of brought up the organizational aspect of this. So I'm curious of what you're doing.
Like I was telling you.
So hold on, I'm not ready.
Yeah,
take it away, Chuck.
I'm writing down JustPressRecord.
Hey, wait, hold on. We didn't do weekly updates, did we? Do you want to do that?
No, we blew right past that.
We're just going to keep talking. I don't care. Maybe we'll do it again.
I mean, same shit, different week.
Press on, Chuck. We'll do the updates.
Now, the reason I thought of this was, and like I was telling you in the pre-show, for the last 15 years, I've had very busy days where it was like I got up at 5:30 and I was going to get kids where they needed to go and make sure they're going to school and eating breakfast and yada, yada, yada. And a couple of weeks ago, kind of got up and they didn't need me. My son's driving himself to school. He'll take my daughter to school sometimes. My wife's taking my daughter to school. They both get up on their own. And, it's getting to where I've got, I was used to writing in I can grab a few minutes here, I can grab a few minutes there. But now I'm starting to have these blocks of time. And I started, okay, I want to get really serious because I'm so far overdue on these Athon books and stuff. I feel bad about it, and I want to get focused and get organized and really, start buckling down because I've got a ton of series I need to finish. And so I started looking at my organizational setup on my computer for work and stuff. And I realized it's utterly chaotic. I've got 2 Microsoft Outlook profiles. I've got 2 Google profiles. The emails from my website go to one of the Outlook things, but one of my Google profiles is attached to all of my writing stuff, like my website setup and my, my different services that I use for writing stuff. And, I've got all these conflicting calendars.
Like Grammarly.
Yeah, stuff like that. Perfect it, And I decided what I want is I want to consolidate all of my writing stuff in one thing, all of my family stuff in a different thing, and I want to find some kind of app or setup that will actually put notifications on my desktop, pop up in the middle of whatever I'm doing and say, hey, it's time to go do this, because I forget shit all the time. And so, yeah, that's what I meant by getting organized. It's really a productivity kind of thing for me at this point, just because, I'm having a little life shift and, those come and go. So, that's kind of my deal. I've just got to figure out, because I want to use Outlook and Microsoft for most of my writing stuff, and then I'll save the Google stuff for my family, but I can't get the Microsoft stuff to talk to the Google stuff and, cross the calendars and all that kind of crap. So that's what made me think of the topic.
So condensing your...
just kind of cleaning it up and getting it more focused and manageable.
It is a good deal. When I first started doing the indie publishing, I had 4 or 5 different versions of my website because I was trying to figure out because I used the Google, what was the Google one? The kind of Weber, was it Weber?
Weebly.
No, it wasn't. I went for Weebly, but before that they had a Blogger.
Blogger,
so I had Weebly, I had Blogger.
Oh yeah, I
had different websites for each of them, and it kind of related to what you're talking about. I do the same thing with writing. So I write at home this way on Scrivener, but I write on my phone on Scrivener iOS, or maybe on Dragon Anywhere, or maybe through Word via the Outlook, and then I have to compile them all back into the main working document and keep track of which one is the most current. And so there's a lot of inefficiencies in there. And I'm the same way with multiple emails for different blogs and things. And I've downloaded every productivity task manager they have, and I use each one for a day, which doesn't make them very effective because the idea is to have one.
Well, are you still using what's that one with the check mark? You can.
Well, there's 2 of them. There's one called AnyDo that has a check mark, and then there's Microsoft To Do that has a check mark.
It was Wonder. Was it Wonder?
Wunderlist became the Microsoft.
Wunderlist.
And to-do list was another one that I think that had a check mark on it.
Yeah.
Because I've been cycling through them the last few days trying to find one that'll do what I want. I thought AnyDo was going to do it, but the calendar would never show me what was on my calendars. And when I set it to show me a notification on my desktop, it never would. I have to actually physically open the app. And John Evans kind of nailed it when he said, I would love to find a task manager which doesn't assume that I'm going to go and look at it. If I was that person, I wouldn't need a task manager.
Yeah.
Sure.
And he's exactly right.
There was a productivity lady that I wish I could remember her name. It's Mel something. But she did talk.
Is she the 10 count lady?
Yeah, she's.
Yeah, anytime you have to make a decision, or if you're about to do something, take a 10 count and really think about what you're about to do before you do it, and if you need to do it, that kind of thing. Yeah,
well, maybe not. I thought hers was more kind of the other way. Is like if you take longer than that, I can't remember. I'll look it up. I'll look her up while one of you guys are talking. But she had this process which was really good, and it involved before you go to bed, you whip out your piece of paper, you go through your to-do list. It's the last thing you do every night, and then you go to sleep, and you wake up, you do the same thing. And what it does is it focuses you to think tactically and organizationally, because like the same thing, and it forces you to look at what you plan to do, and then you have to be picky. Because what I do with all these apps now is I throw everything I need to get done on them. Well, then I have this long untenable list that I hate looking at, and I don't look at it. But if I had to sit down there and say I have to pick 3 things, and these are only 3 things, or something like that.
Priority list, not a to-do list.
Yeah, but it goes through. I'll look that up. When did you guys?
Well, it's interesting that you just mentioned that, because I was listening to the Six Figure Author podcast with Chris Fox a couple of days ago, and they were talking about his, he had that 5,000 words an hour book, and how he was writing so many words a day and this and that, and after he had a kid, his productivity kind of dropped, and instead of doing 5,000 words a day, he was just cramming as many words as he could into like the hour or 2 before the kid got up. And he said one of the things that he uses it's actually to end his day, but to begin his writer day, is that when he goes to bed, he thinks about the next scene in the book that he's going to write in the morning. And he basically pre-visualizes that as he's getting ready for bed, or while he's in bed, going to sleep or whatever. And then when he wakes up the next morning, he already knows, he's had that subconscious train of this is what I'm doing. And so he can just sit down and start working, and he doesn't have to spend the time to kind of get used to it.
If you prime the pump. Yeah, and so that's a good thing. So most people go to bed worrying about all this shit, worrying about house payments and getting the yard fixed and this, that, and the other thing. But if you went to bed just thinking about kind of what you wanted to do, maybe that would be better. Yeah. Mel Robbins is the person I'm talking about. She has a lot of good.
Yeah, Mel Robbins.
The 5-second rule, I think.
5 seconds. 5 seconds. That's what it is. Rule. Yeah.
I read the book. It's pretty good. I'm
going to look that up. We mentioned the voice recorder and the JustPressRecord app. I highly recommend trying to do something like that. I'm going to put the recorder in the live chat, and I think that it's for both Android and iPhone. I know specifically that it is for iPhone, the JustPressRecord app. I highly recommend people to try that, even if it's just for notes to yourself, because you don't have to do story writing. You can just kind of, like we're saying, prime the pump, and even just kind of take your way through a scene, talk your way through it without actually doing narrative. And that's helped me a lot too. In kind of with Savage Stars, I had originally started kind of in media res and at the end of this battle. But then as I kind of started talking through it, I realized that it would be better to set it up more. And it would allow me to kind of show different things that I wanted to show about the character. And that basically took me from 1 chapter to 5. And I did that kind of just talking it out and transcribed that over and kind of broke it down into scenes. But Mel Robbins, I'm going to look that up.
Yeah, so the 5 second rule is basically if you have an instinct or something, you decision that you've made the decision. So that's kind of the key point, is that if you don't act in 5 seconds, then your subconscious will kill your initiative. And so if you say I'm going to sit down to write, and then you fuck around for 5 minutes, then you lose momentum. But if you say it's time to write, and then you just do it without letting anything get in the way, then you're more likely to get started. That type of thing.
Yeah, I actually have a desktop wallpaper that has like the covers of the books that I need, the series that I need to finish on it, and then on either side it says "Don't think, just write."
Yeah,
and that's exactly that kind of thing, because I'm so easily distracted, and it's weird because I didn't used to be like that. I don't know if it's because I'm getting old and flabby or what, but I just for some reason I'm finding it harder and harder to focus.
I think some of it is that resistance that what's his name talks about. Stephen
Stephen
Pressfield.
Pressfield.
But I also think that the further the more responsibilities you have, because I was at work last week, and I was like, I think I literally have some sort of functional ADD, because I have to do 5 things at once, and if I'm not doing 5 things at once, I feel like I'm not being productive because I have so many things to do all the time. There's that whole the Stephen Covey thing, that has the 4 quadrants, like important, urgent, important, not urgent, not important, not urgent, those things. And so the important, urgent are things you have to do right now, literally putting out forest fires all the time. So I go to work and my life is defined by 911 calls. And so no matter what you plan to do, somebody calls you and says, you have to go do this right now.
Right.
And so that's how I think. But really, but the key to success is operating in the sector of not urgent but important. So writing a book is not urgent but important, because you can't do it in one setting. Yeah. It's a long-term, everyday kind of goal, and it's hard to. So, kind of what Chuck and I are going through is you have all these things that kind of distract you all the time, and they feel like I have to do these right now, or else the house is going to burn down, and then you can never get to that sector where you're doing the long-term important stuff, like improving your writing, getting the book done, networking with people who you care about, all those things like that.
I have the same problem that William Mallory has. I think I pronounced that right. If I didn't, I apologize. My huge problem is fucking around for 5 minutes after saying let's write. I do that a lot. And even before I get into the flow state, like trying to get in the flow state, I'll sit down, I'll open up my stuff, start writing. I'll get like 5 minutes in and get distracted by something and go handle that. And then it takes me that much longer to get into the flow state. But yeah, definitely the sitting down and then opening up YouTube and watching YouTube videos.
Some of that's being a parent too, because I keep track of my time, as everybody knows. So I'll have a timer. And so for years, probably the last 10 years, I would get mad because I would know exactly how long it was before I got interrupted. I would sit down to write, and it would usually be about 38 seconds.
I know. Right.
I was
exactly the same
literally,
way, man.
Yeah.
I said,
and then you're like, I might as well just not do anything, because I know in
Exactly.
5 minutes I'm going to get interrupted. Yeah.
And that's depressing, okay? Because I don't know about you guys, but when I'm like dedicated to finishing a story or whatever, and I get those constant interruptions, it's demoralizing. It makes me want to say fuck it and just not do, and just like go, drink a bottle of bourbon or something. I mean, it's very depressing.
It's physically exhausting.
Yeah. Parlo wants to know if Scott has tried meditation.
I have. I've done lots of different versions of it, but
most of his meditation ends up going fuck it and beating something with a hammer.
It is funny because like what happens with me when I do meditation, I'll try to. I've had better luck recently doing some ones where I don't really try to meditate. I just try not to think about anything, which I guess is meditation. But when I try to meditate, what I wind up doing is like what creeps into my mind is like, okay, I'm at work and somebody pops out in front of me and starts shooting people. And then I'm like, okay, what if, and then you do, it's a drill they teach in the academy. It's the if then. It's like, if this happens, then I'll do this. And so I start working through, okay, I would do this, but what if somebody was hurt? What if I was hurt? And I go through all these things, and I'm sitting here having this, and I get your adrenaline and cortisol is so jacked up from envisioning possibly being involved in a shooting that hasn't happened and probably never will happen. And so, I meditation, I think is a good thing, but I guess you got to make it a priority and do it every day. Maybe that would be the key. But
yeah, it has to be a habit thing. I tried that stuff back when I was younger, and it didn't stick. But
Yeah,
What's interesting about meditation is I started doing this yoga for first responders back before I got out of the police department, and I was not sold on it. And probably I should do it more, but it's crazy how throughout the day you're like, I need to get this done, I need to get this done, and so you're always like bang, bang, bang. Like Patricia Gillum says, I used to make the mistake of busyness with productivity.
Yes.
Took time to work that out and give myself breaks to focus long term, which is kind of the same thing I had going on with my yoga / meditation. Is you convince yourself that you don't have 5 minutes to stop and figure out what you're going to need to do, but you really, if you take that time to stop and kind of clear your head about things, you realize you do have the time to do that, because the rest of the time you're just fixated around, I don't have the time to do something, and you're so focused on that if you would have just rather like spent the 5 minutes it took to get in the zone, instead of just going, I need to do this, I need to do this, I need to do this, it would put you in a much better flow state, which is something that I've been trying to work on too. It's I started doing that, breaking out my week on the calendar and journaling. I haven't done the journal in like probably a month, and I need to get back to doing that because it was easier for me to work on that, take the time every morning to break out the journal, focus on what I needed to do, write it down in my calendar. And once I did that and kind of took the time to organize stuff, the week went so much better.
Well, and you can dump all those worries.
Right.
I wrote it down. I can forget about it for now.
I really think that's a kind of moving meditation, journaling. Yeah. It really is. Because really anything that causes you to really focus and sort of clear your mind can be considered a type of meditation. So maybe not that deep picture the white field in your brain kind of meditation, but it's still something that kind of helps you blow out the tailpipes in your head. So
you are an oak in the wind.
Yes.
You feel the breeze on your branches.
Yeah,
and then you get this terrified feeling that you're rooted to the ground and you can't move. And you're like, oh my God.
Oh, listen, I dated a girl back in the day, and she was heavy into all this stuff, which is part of the reason I ended up trying it. And she would go to these group meditations, these guided ones where you just sit there and somebody sits up front and plays the new age music and talks you through it. And I think she dumped me because she caught me snoring at one of them.
Dude, I fell asleep during the yoga class one time, and I had those blocks beside me, and I did one of those, those spasms you do when you're getting into REM sleep. And I knocked over the block, and everybody like freaked out. And I was like, I sat up, and I was like, oh man, that's my bad.
I lost my thought. Never mind.
Patricia says, "Just don't be a leaf in the wind." 100%.
I'm a leaf in the wind. I'm a sail on a stick.
You know how you clean off your spears though, is you wash them. That's
nice.
Do the
heard that one.
Do the Arya Stark meditation where she just lists all the people she wants to kill.
Yeah.
Is surface like still water or whatever.
William says for meditation, I go to drone metal, nothing.
Whatever works, man. Whatever works.
Then you get in that meditation.
I asked Rick,
and you're like, let the bodies hit the floor, and then you just want to kill people afterwards.
I think that's drowning pool, but anyway.
Oh yeah, true.
Somebody mentioned Brain FM earlier, and I used that for a while. It's pretty good.
It's really good. I really, once I get into the writing, it's a really, really, Brain FM is really, really, really good. So while we were all talking, I asked Rick, because he brought the question, have you tried meditation? And then I just talked and didn't ask him. So I asked him what type of meditation. And that's, I think, his comment there is answering what I'd asked him in the live chat.
I close my eyes and empty my mind, trying to chant something simple to stop thinking, usually something like silence, darkness. Interesting.
See, if I tried that, I'd get Simon and Garfunkel songs stuck in my head.
Yeah. That is the whole, because like I think a lot of it, like if you've ever read The Wheel of Time, sorry to bring that up, Josh, because I know that's traumatic to you, but in The Wheel of Time, the main character is Land, well, not Land, that's the warder, and the main character, he's trying to become a sword master, and they always meditate on the flame. and it's trying to empty their mind of all thoughts but the flame. So they just think of the flame and things like that. So, but that is what most meditation says, is you're trying to not think. That's really, really hard. I guess it must take a lot of practice to get good at it.
I'm sure. Yeah, absolutely. Because I mean, I think most people kind of have noisy minds, and I think writers have them even more.
Yeah, get that monkey brain. It's going all over the place.
Really quick, I want to mention our sponsor again today. It's SciFiReads.com. If you go to this link and you sign up for the newsletter, they have basically 6 free stories that you'll get just by signing up for the newsletter. And it's Battle for Starn by Chris Fox, Out of Time, Rewind 717 by Christian Calais, The Gauntlet by Scott Bartlett, Freedom's End by Christian Calais, Invincible by G.P. Hudson, and then Rising Phoenix, Knights of Pantheone by Brandon Ellis and Killian Carter. If you sign up for the newsletter, there at the link, you get those 6 stories free. And then, of course, every time they put it in the newsletter, they'll show you deals of books you can get for cheap, on the cheap. But going back, I think it's one of those things that, especially going full time, when you have all the time to sit around. One of the things that Patricia said earlier was just kind of being busy instead of being productive. And that's one of the things as an indie author specifically that you can get caught up in, doing newsletters and whatever. If you're working on your own cover, like Scott and I used to get big, like days long of like searching through Deposit Photo for the right image for your cover, or messing around with fonts for hours and hours and hours.
Getting organized is a great excuse to not write.
Stephen Pressfield refers to a version of that in his book, The War of Art, and it's called a shadow career. This is a little bit, but it goes to show what you're saying. It's basically a shadow career is when you do something you feel is important and you put aside what's really important. It's like, like for me, I'm like, well, I have this job where I think it's important to be a police officer or something. That is important. But the thing is, it makes it really easy not write, because you feel totally justified in putting the writing aside. Same thing with like what you're talking about, Josh. Like I would get on Photoshop, I'm like, I'm making a book cover. This is really important. Yeah. But it's not getting any words written, and I'm not a book cover designer. So
I spent 12 hours working on a cover and then you're like, oh, I'll just have Steve.
So those kind of false distractions that feel like the right thing to do, but they're not. So like what Chuck's talking about, making the list and the productivity apps, is finding what you really need to do today, and then doing the most important things first, which is such a simple concept, but none of us do it.
Right.
Like
it's super easy to say and talk about.
The most important I need to do is to make this deadline. And then I get up and mow the yard because the grass is getting to look a little shoddy, which was not my goal.
One of the craziest things that Gary Vee always says, and he says it almost every talk he has. If you don't know who Gary Vee is, he's an entrepreneur, kind of motivational speaker type person, and super into business. But he does a podcast. He does YouTube videos. He basically documents his whole life, and he has people that follow him around with cameras all the time. Not that he's arrogant or conceited or just like wants people to see what he does, but to show basically people that if you put your mind to it, you can get it done, right? And one of the things he says is 90% of the people that watch or consume his content don't do the steps that he specifically lays out, because he's written a couple of books, but he doesn't do like paid for like how-to type things. He just gives it all away, everything.
Yeah, he doesn't have a course for 3 easy payments of $6.99 or something.
Right, exactly. Something that Scott would jump right on. But
I would have that course.
He says he lays everything out, and then people ask him, why do you lay all that stuff out and not charge people for it? It's because, he says, 90% of the people that consume my content won't do the things that I tell them they should do.
Yep.
They just won't do it. And it's interesting just to kind of go back into what we're talking about, just like we're right now, we're talking about things that we need to do. And it's difficult to put those changes or put those things into effect, because that takes focus and it takes energy. And
going with that, it's really interesting, because people always say knowledge is power, but really, and maybe it is or was more back when knowledge was hard to get, but all the information we need to succeed is out there. I think execution is power. So like, for example, I know how to get in shape, but I don't do the right things. I eat the wrong foods. And even though I know what the right foods are, like it's hard for me to get my books done when I want to, because I know what I need to do is write the books. But instead, I spend time refining my outlining process or something, which I think is important, but it's like 5% that should come after I write.
Right.
And so
action without knowledge is chaos, and knowledge without action is impotency. I mean, it really, you just...
Somebody clip that.
Is that a Papa Chuck original, or did you get that from someplace?
I don't know.
Say it again.
It might be. Not knowledge without action is impotency. Action without knowledge is chaos. 100%. And it's just if you just start doing shit with no plan and no idea about what you're trying to affect, odds are very good it's going to get all screwed up.
Yes.
But if you know what you should do, but you don't do it, you don't take action, then what good is the knowledge?
Yeah.
It's impotency.
And that's where the 5-second rule comes in. What we were talking about with Mel Robbins earlier is you know what you need to do, but you don't, because you stall, you check your Instagram, whatever.
Right.
So you know what you need to do. You need to do that immediately, like as soon as you can physically do it.
Yeah.
And then you have to have a way to stick in it for long enough to be effective. That's the hard part.
And I like what you said about the shadow careers, because most writers I know have dozens of those.
Yeah, and it's very, the shadow career is very big in society, because what's the first thing you are? Any type of creative person says, I want to be a writer, or I want to be a musician, I want to be an artist. What's the first thing you're told by every single human being you meet? Well, you better have a career to fall back on, and that's good advice, but it also just cuts your legs out from underneath you.
Yeah. Well, because you don't have to focus on that. Because it's not what's producing, it's not what's making money. I like Patricia Gillum had a good point about Gary Vee talking about documenting his stuff helps with process and accountability, and I think 100% that's accurate. I don't know if that's why he does it, but I think it's accurate. I know that I've talked about doing live writing streams just to keep me accountable. I know James S. Aaron and Jeff Haskell have both done the same thing, and they have done writing streams in the mornings or whenever they're writing, basically, to keep that accountability. To just because if they tell people they're going to have the stream, or they tell people they're going to be streaming, or they actually are streaming but they're not writing, then that's like live accountability. And that's interesting to me.
Yep.
So the accountability falls in the fact that other people will be expecting you to do this thing and hang out with you while you do it.
Yeah, it's accountability in that, you can say you're going to write and then just not write. Right. If you're just going to do it by yourself, like you're sitting in your office and working, you're like, I'm going to write today. And then you go downstairs and you just watch YouTube all day. Right. Or you could say, I'm going to do a writing stream today, and you set up everything and you hit go live. And then if you're not actually doing it, then people are going to say, hey, you're not writing.
It's harder to cheat if somebody's looking over your shoulder and is like, he's not writing, he's playing World of Warcraft in a sidebar. Totally.
That's true.
But there's also a real phenomenon that's been tested in lots of times in psychology called the observer effect, and it's pretty simple. Yeah. Basically, they've shown many times that if somebody's watching you, then you will perform at a higher level than unattended, because you don't want to look like a chump is, I guess the main thing. Yeah. What I have done, what has been a pretty neat tool for me sometimes, is I will imagine somebody that I respect as a writer watching me write, which would never happen. You're not going to have, Stephen King, George R.R. Martin, and J.K. Rowling sitting there in your office watching you write. But sometimes, and that's,
what do you mean?
That's it. Yeah, Chuck, except for Chuck. Chuck has it all the time.
Every day. I don't know what you're talking about.
But I will, sometimes I'm writing, I will literally imagine them reading as I go, going, oh wow, and that makes you want to write more, because you have this imaginary, slightly psychotic, alternate reality where people literally care about every word you write, and it makes you more motivated than just thinking, nobody's ever going to read this shit. This sucks.
I have a very hard time with stuff like that. With my wife tells me that I am like chronically unconcerned with what people think of me.
Your give a fuck level is like way down here.
To an abnormal degree.
Yeah.
Like, I just don't care.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, I'm living my life. Y'all live y'all's. I hope everybody's safe and happy, but I don't give a shit. Unless I go out and start murdering people, and they have, and there's like a legitimate reason to judge me for something I did.
Yeah.
I don't give a fuck. So, so the whole group accountability thing doesn't. It's just never, you know. I don't know. Maybe I'm psychotic or sociopathic or something. I don't know.
And you know, and that's kind of why I talk about having the kind of fictional writing mentors and stuff, is because you pick people that you, because there probably is a small handful of people that you would value their opinions or something. And I'm not saying that's a great tactic, but it is. We're talking about the observation. I find that more useful than just doing a writing stream to random people, because there's pitfalls in the live writing stream. Because what if you do a live writing stream and nobody watches it? Now it just guts you to your soul. Like,
and that's why I've never done one.
Yeah,
I would fully expect 0 people to give a shit.
I'd watch it. It wouldn't be 0. So
well, you know, you're too busy to watch me. You need to take a nap.
I would use it as my shadow career. It's important to watch writing this book.
That's right.
That's right. It's more important than writing my own.
I want to say hi to Fa Big Ben, who's live on the show. I haven't seen you in a while. Welcome.
A minute.
And glad you're here. And Guy Anthony DeBarco is in the live chat. What's up, Guy?
Yeah.
Let's see if I missed anybody.
We got Jeff
Haskell's in the chat. John's in the chat. Welcome, everybody, and thank you for joining us this Monday morning. Jeff says, I do it because I'm an extrovert. Having people watch me gives me energy to write, and I'm accountable only to myself. If you guys didn't see his 24-hour writing sprint, that was pretty legit. He did several months ago back.
That's hardcore, man.
24 hours of slamming out words on a stream. It was funny as I went to bed, him streaming, and then woke up and he was still streaming. And I'm like, man, I'm such a loser. I was sleeping.
Right?
Yeah.
Well, it's
How
good.
Dare you have normal human biology?
I know, right?
Yeah. Well, Jeff is definitely an extrovert. You know, he's somebody definitely. I mean that in a good way. So, and some people it would be the absolute. That's a good point, because some people, a lot of writers are introverts, and it would be like the absolute worst thing they could do ever to try to write publicly.
That's me.
One of the, not say best tools, but one of the most telling tools I think that you can use to look at your writing time or organization is the word count deal. And I know that I have not been keeping up with that. I've been doing a lot of editing, and a lot of times I'm not tracking the words during that. But we have our own word count spreadsheet for Keystroke. It's Keystroke Rimo. We see dozens of people plugging in their words every day, and it could be, you know, you get a mixture of motivation and demotivation, I think, because you can see like keeping up with other people, but then also seeing other people are writing more than others. I just think it's a good way to just keep up with it, no matter how many words you're putting in. It's
a good accountability thing. I mean, like I said, you look in there right now and you'll see I have some word. My word counts are not good. My goal in that word spreadsheet is 100,000 words a month, and the closest I've come is like 84,000. But like the last 2 months, I've barely made 60. Yeah, and I think I had a 50, and there's been days with 13 words I put in there. There's days with, you know, a couple hundred words, but it goes back to it is I really firmly believe in the power of momentum, and that if you take more than a day off completely from writing, then you're making a mistake. And people say, well, you say you're recharging. I'm like, yeah, well, you're going to recharge, but there's no guarantee you're coming back. It's like navigating through the jungle of life, is that you can go off on a different path, but you may not come back to that story. Kind of like in the Stephen King's book on writing, he talks about writing a book in 90 days or it dies. And I really firmly believe that if you take too long to write a book, your motivation to finish it will be in the shitter. Let's just be honest.
Which is one of the things I like about my plotting, because like everybody says, like who pants is. I'm not a plotter. I don't like to do that because I like discovery writing. But for me, the plotting is the discovery writing.
Yeah, right? It's all discovery.
And so I think if I can move through that in such a way that I can pace out through the story, and then I know that it's a good story by the time I get to the end, and then to go back, it's like you spend 90 days writing a first draft, you go back and edit it anyway, right?
It's a really turns out to be your pantsuit first draft is a really detailed outline.
Exactly. Yeah.
It needs to be.
Big Ben says our local weekly writer support group has given me an incredible consistency in word output, resilience to keep going, a sense of responsibility, etc., etc. One of ours summed it up neatly. It's weird not to write when everyone around you is writing. I think John Evans said basically the same thing earlier.
It's our new normal. I see that William Tyler Davis is in the chat.
What's up, William? If you guys didn't know, he also has a really funny TikTok that he does a lot of writing TikToks on. It's hilarious. He says, I've been using Pacemaker to build that momentum. It plans on me writing more on weekends and at the end of the process. Oh, right on. So you can kind of set up. It's almost like Scrivener's daily word count thing where you can see your Chuck's pens clicking.
I was writing something down.
He was writing down Pacemaker, I bet.
I was.
And all this will be in the show notes from our one and only Ken Britz, who does a fantastic job documenting our show and keeping timestamps for all the shenanigans. I always like to see different programs. So Pacemaker, I might have to check out too. I like having the one thing I like about Scrivener is the word count projection, and so you can see if I want to write this 100,000 word novel, you can see how many words a day you're going to have to write. Yeah, right. And that's very helpful to me.
That's where I learned this morning that I need to write 4,200 words today in the next 3 days to make my deadline for the book that's on pre-order.
Yeah, but if you write 8,000 words today, you only have to write 2,000 words tomorrow.
Yeah, that's not going to happen. But thanks for your optimism.
You're welcome. Let's see. Brendan says, if I'm bored, they will too. Generally, it means someone needs to die or something needs to blow up.
That's true.
Yes,
right.
100%. Yeah. You know, it's funny. I've been reading thrillers recently, and so I'm listening to The Gray Man Book 5, but I'm reading True Believer by Jack Carr. Both are modern day thrillers. Both kind of have a one. The True Believer is a ex Navy SEAL operator, the character, but also the writer. Actually, it turns out. And then Mark Greaney he's just like a CIA assassin, and it's interesting in the writing styles. I've been completely pulled into The Gray Man because there is no lull. Like everybody talks about doing these ups and downs in the narrative and it getting like boring, so you pick it on up. There's no lull at all. There's just bam, 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 bam. One of the things I noticed about True Believer last night when I was reading it is he sets up this character, which about 2/3 of the way through the chapter, I knew that this character was going to die. There was just no other way to end the chapter. But there was so much backstory for this character. And it took up like 2 or 3 pages on Kindle of this person's history in the military and the great things that he's done and all this other stuff. And then you get through all that and you just by the way he's setting up the dialogue as a writer, I could see it coming. And I'm like, he's going to kill this dude. And I just spent 3 pages.
Yeah, that stuff should have been spread out before the event.
But that's the thing is he's not a main character. He's just an event that happens.
You just met him and he's going to die.
Did it feel like an info dump?
Yeah, 100% it did.
But thrillers have a lot of info dumps.
They do.
Well, that's
true. They really do. They get away with it.
So my comparison is Mark Greaney does that a lot, and it's one of the things I've noticed about these 2 books in general. But I think it's thrillers as a medium or as a genre. Is you set up characters that aren't the main character to experience things that the main character couldn't see, right? Well, one of the things that Greaney does is he really doesn't give you any backstory on any of the side characters at all. Like he'll tell you a couple paragraphs of, his time here was done this and blah, but it's never like whole pages of information. It's just enough to tell you who this character is. Sometimes he doesn't even give names. Sometimes he's just like the dude in the red hat walking down the sidewalk had no idea this shadowy figure was going to run out and shoot him in the leg. But that's one of the interesting things that I've noticed about the 2 different books, even in the same genre, is that Mark Greaney gives almost no backstory at all, and it's almost all like 98% action. Whereas in True Believer, which is the Jack Carr book, there is multiple sections where he is giving a lot of backstory, almost Tom Clancy-esque in a sense, where he's giving all these intricate details about different characters' lives or even of the things. And like I think it was who was it earlier that said when they get bored, it's time for an explosion. Reading Mark Greeny's book, I don't know that I've ever come across a chapter in the last 5 books that I thought was a boring chapter that was just here for time filling. And it's one of the things I'm trying really hard to do in my writing, even though I don't write thrillers, trying to keep that pace up. That's because it's crazy how well he does it. But it's also a testament to see how well how many books he sells, because his rankings on Amazon, his books have like 13,000 rankings or whatever.
Yeah. Well, those are a big selling genre for sure.
I'm just going to catch up on the live chat here for a second. Jeff Haskell says Pacemaker seems awesome. I'll have to check that out, and maybe we can have William on to talk about it, because I always like to see different programs. Obviously, we talked about Plottr, testing those out and seeing how beneficial, and maybe even how much time spent wasting learning how to do new apps. Kind of like, well, people don't like Scrivener is because it's such a big program, and you spend so much time learning it, which goes to the resistance. And you're like, oh, I need to learn this program, and it's going to take me 3 weeks to learn the program.
Right.
And then when you get done learning it, it really doesn't help you out all that much.
Or making spreadsheets incessantly.
Yeah, Scott.
No, spreadsheets are never wrong. There's always room for one more spreadsheet. It's just another tab. My current hail. Let me double check. This is funny you said that. So, this year my goal was to not make. Yep, it is exactly what I thought. It was to just do one spreadsheet and stick with it all year. Well, my current daily productivity tablet, I didn't rename it. Normally I rename it to like current spreadsheet, but right now its default name is Sheet 100. It's the 100 spreadsheet I've made since the beginning of 2021 to be productive.
Chris Winder is in the chat. What's up, Chris Winder? And I actually missed Charlie Dunn said what's up earlier in the chat, and I missed him. So what's up, Charlie? If you're still listening, driving across this great country.
Yeah, he's covered like 600 miles since he's back.
So I don't know. I think going forward this year, maybe we should pick out a couple of these programs and do some kind of in-depth study on them. I think trying out different programs, but also seeing pros and cons and kind of documenting them would be helpful for writers looking at trying different things. Maybe we can kind of break down different things and go over pros and cons.
We can just all hire virtual assistants that are like really aggressive and tell us what to do and whatnot.
Don't I do that already, Scott? I am your virtual assistant when it comes to this.
I need more virtual assisting because I have like 5 different projects I'm working on at the same time, which is probably wrong.
John Evans says he's still waiting for Atticus, and yes, I'm waiting for Atticus too.
What is Atticus?
Atticus is like the thing that Dave Cheston's working on. It's kind of the blend of Scrivener and Vellum, and so I'm really actually excited by that because I love the functionality of Scrivener, and Vellum is super easy and super great to make ebooks. So I'm curious to see how I'm really curious to see how Plottr and Atticus work together, because if I could make Plottr work with Atticus, those would be like blending 2 awesome programs together, and I could knock out Word and I can knock out Scrivener, and so I'd be interested to see how well those 2.
Is there any kind of time frame on a release for that? Do we know?
I know that it's in beta.
Okay.
I know that they're looking at getting additional people into the testing cycle. I think even Jeff had mentioned at one point that he was beta testing Atticus. And I know that there are other people that have, and maybe it's even an alpha test. I know that there are other people that are alpha testing it. And I think the last time I talked to Dave, he said they came up with a couple hiccups on some of the integration between the word processing and the Vellum type software. I'm not sure, but they were working on kind of wrapping that up. They kind of hit a speed bump there, and it took them a little bit longer to come up with a workaround or function for that. So hopefully pretty soon. You can go to, I think it's Atticus.press, I think. Hold on, let me see if I can find it. Atticus writing software. Atticus.pub is where you can sign up for the wait list. And apparently it works across all operating systems, and I think it's browser based. I could be wrong, but it looks like it's functional between multiple platforms and even on mobile, as far as I know. But we'll see, I guess, more when it comes out. So yeah, Atticus.pub is where you can sign up for that.
I'm going to put that on my spreadsheet to learn Atticus.pub.
I don't always love the browser-based stuff, you know.
I tried Story Shop when Story Shop came out a couple of years ago. I even paid for the
yeah, I mean,
you were a Kickstarter,
yeah. It was like $300 for the lifetime deal, and there was several issues with it when it launched, and then they went back to the drawing board and kind of redid it, and it never really hit the spot for me.
With most of those things like that for me, probably including Plottr up to a point, is it's not Scrivener. Really, what it really boils down to is because it's just, and I think I'm gonna keep working with it just to push myself to try something different, to outline and not write until the outline's done. But my process really involves going back and forth, and it just is hard, and it's not Scrivener.
Yeah. Well, I think the thing if you want to try and outline to the end, I think the important thing to remember is the outline is not sacred.
Yes.
Right.
I mean, you know, you can map it all out, but if you need to change it midstream,
get a puppy.
Yeah, y'all can come just shoot my dogs or something.
Chuck got a package if everybody wants to know.
Exactly. Well, that's what happens to me is I outline, and then I get to the point where it's the outlining and kind of get stuck where I'm like, I'm really not quite sure where to go with this, and I need to make, and then I'm like, but I do have some great ideas to do the narrative writing on chapter 1. I'm really pumped about that, so I just start on that because that's where my energy is.
Right.
And it usually works for me because then by the time I write up to where I stopped outlining, then I just outline the rest of the book, and that tends to work for me. But there, like I said, there's always pros and cons.
Yeah. I think one of the things that I've found at least while plotting, is it kind of goes back to what we talked about at the beginning of the show, is taking that 5 minutes or taking that time to stop and just kind of give yourself that time to process. And that's what I've done a lot of times when I get into my real serious plotting modes, which is what I'm going to start today. I'm going to try to plot out Savage Stars in the next 2 weeks and spend that time and get the first book at least all the way plotted out. And a lot of times I'll come up to a area where I'm like, I'm not completely sure about this, and I'll have that hiccup, but then I'll just start kind of coming up with options of where to take the story from there, and usually that will trigger something that fixes.
Yeah.
And I don't have, like you're saying, going back and forth between writing narrative and plotting. I'll just start writing out ideas down. It doesn't matter what they are. I just kind of going through there, and usually that triggers a fix to what I had problem with in the plotting process. John Evans says Scrivener for Windows just launched Scrivener 3 for Windows just came out, which I find is interesting because I didn't think there was any news about that. But it just launched recently, which means 4 is coming out for Mac this year, probably.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah, I love Scrivener. I'm hoping that Atticus as a browser-based thing is better, because that will allow me to kind of jump back and forth between devices super easily. And it's easy to do that with Scrivener on the Mac. But then if I need to do like anything on my PC, I can't go back and forth between them. So Lou says, Scott, I imagine you writing with 5 computers in a row, each with a different novel and work in progress. A bell rings every 5 minutes so you can switch to the next computer. That would be actually a really funny game.
Actually, it's not that far from the bell is kind of my own little monkey mind going back and forth, you know.
A squirrel.
Yeah.
I think I just gave myself broke my neck or something.
Whiplash there.
And Jeff says Atticus is a downloadable app, and I believe he said earlier that it was also browser based, so it's an app and browser based, which is coincidentally that's what Plottr is too. I think you can do Plottr online, and then it's also a browser.
Which I learned one thing about Plottr that I'll share as my tip: if you don't change the Plottr file name, because that'll screw you all up.
Yeah, don't do that.
Because when I do Scrivener, I'll rename it like what the current date is as it changes, and I'll keep actually whole versions of it as I go. I try to do that with Plottr, and it doesn't like that. just when you start the project, just stick with that name for it in your files.
Pro tip from
I
Scott.
have a whole bunch of screenshots I sent angrily to Josh like it was his fault. Like, what the fuck's going on with it?
I'm like scrolling through going, don't do that.
There's a problem here. Every button I push, I'm like, and then I finally started a brand new project. I didn't have that problem anymore because I just left it named what it was named when I started it. So pick a good name in the beginning.
And stay logged in. Everybody, thank you for coming and hanging out with us on the live show today. It was I love the back and forth we had going on with the chat today.
A lot of good stuff in the chat.
If you're listening on the audio feed, like I said before, come hang out with us live on Monday. We like people hanging out with us. It makes it way easier to do the show when we have people to talk about or laugh at or just engage in conversation with randomly.
Or laugh at us.
Also. Or laugh at us, yes. I'm not sure who Lauren and Kayleen have coming on Friday. They did a book. Was it a book collector? I missed the show because I was doing yard work this weekend and
it's that season.
I hate mowing the lawn.
Yeah,
my old neighbor and I, it used to be a running joke. Whoever would mow their lawn first, the other one would just come out and flip the other person off. And so my new neighbor started mowing his lawn. And he's got this riding lawnmower. He's riding around, and I went out and stood on my deck, like just staring at him like this. In about 2 minutes, I realized two things: A, he didn't know we were playing that game, and two, he couldn't see me because he was paying attention to what he was driving. So probably a good thing.
I just checked the calendar, and it looks like Lauren and Kayleen are going to be doing a build and author mastermind group with James S. Aaron.
Oh, cool!
Oh, nice.
Yeah, good one.
That's great.
That'll be pretty good.
James is super knowledgeable about that because coincidentally he runs a mastermind that I'm a part of. It's more of a group effort. He's not like the king sitting on the throne.
I'm not sure I even know what that is.
King Aaron.
Basically, there's
two types.
There were two types of kings or two types
two types of masterminds. You have one where you all work together kind of as equals and lift each other up, and then you have a mastermind where you pay somebody $35,000 to go hang out with them for a week in whatever.
Right.
Don't do the second one.
What we do is it's basically just kind of a weekly meeting with 6-7 writers. We talk about what we're doing, talking about challenges. We've had several instances where a member has had a problem with a title or something that is happening with their story or whatever, and then we just kind of work through that and help each other out. And it's an accountability thing, but it's also like sharing successes and sharing.
Sounds like a fancy name for a writers group.
That's exactly what it is.
Yeah, or if you have a Scott Moon mental breakdown, then they talk you off the cliff and then like to write it.
Don't do it, Scott.
Just go write. Stop being a whiny.
Step away from the sledgehammer, Scott.
Brandon says, Scott, how do you write 5 books at a time? That's probably a whole other show that we.
The short answer is only one of them really gets its full attention, and I have them. I work on them in order. So my most important one, next one, and so as you get the bottom of the list, I get less and less work on them per day or per week.
He just assigns one of his personalities to each book.
Exactly. The priority book gets the most work every day, and then the second one usually gets something every day, and everything else is kind of get scraps.
I need to make it back onto my beginning 2019 process where I was doing drafting on one project in the morning and then doing outlining and editing on the other project in the afternoon.
That's a good way.
And that kind of helped you kind of go back and forth between.
I was thinking about doing something like that, like starting off in Plottr, because I've been playing with it too, and then like doing that for like the first 30 minutes of my writing time and then getting into my work in progress, or the other way around, because if I start with the plotting of something else, I find it might be hard to shift over to actually writing. So maybe do the writing first and then
experiment and see which one is best.
Yeah.
I always found that if I use the majority of my energy for the main project that I'm working on in the morning, like I know that I need to write on this, I get a couple hours done in that project. And then like we talked about earlier, like you get started and 5 minutes later, the kid needs a juice or you got to go pick up your kid or whatever. The secondary project isn't that important. I mean, it like you're saying, Scott, it goes in the urgent but not important category, and you can kind of, if you're just note taking or you're just editing or whatever, it's not something you get enough. You don't need to be in a flow state specifically for that. You can just kind of play with it a little bit.
So on that, I'm gonna out Rick Partlow because we've talked a lot, and he has certain word counts that where he kind of stops and moves. So he'll do this kind of the same thing. He'll write on one for a while, then take a break and write another one. But like what you're saying, Josh, what I'll do is, so I try to mimic like getting up in the morning and you wake up, you write. And I take naps a lot because my schedule's jacked up. So what I'll do is I'll work on the first project after I get up, and then I'll go do some stuff, and then I'll take my afternoon nap, and then I'll get up and write again. So it's kind of like dividing the day and having 2 days in one.
Right.
That makes sense. That's not a bad way if anybody wants to try it. I'll just know what you think of it.
All right, everybody, thanks for coming and hanging out with us today. If you are just now finding us on YouTube, hit the like button. Matter of fact, anybody who's watching right now, if you don't hit the like button right now, you can't come back to next week's show. That's just a standing rule. If you don't like the show this week, you can't come back for next show.
Empty threat.
Well, don't let them know now.
Sorry.
It's later.
But I think that you should hit the like button right after you find 10 other people to watch the show. Bring your friends. It's the right thing to do.
Today was a fun show. Thanks everybody for hanging out with us. We're going to come back next week. We're going to talk about some reading. We're going to talk about some writing, and of course everything in between, right here on Keystroke Medium. Peace.
Later, guys.